Hey YouTube, I'm here with a voiceover to give you a couple extra details about our travels. We woke up in Alabama on November 12th. This was actually the day of my birthday, so we were trying to make our travels a little more fun even though we were actually doing this for a job. As you can see, it was pretty foggy and it was raining from the East Coast when we left. The sun actually didn't end up coming out in Mississippi, but when it did get dark, you could see everything was already decorated early for the holidays. We spent our second night in Arkansas, and while driving through Arkansas, we saw a nuclear power plant. Here in Oklahoma was the first time me or my husband had actually seen windmills up close in person, so when it did get dark, we were a little confused by the lights that we saw, so I wish we could have left in the audio because it was pretty funny. As we were recording it, we were figuring out that these were actually the windmills. Our next night was in New Mexico, and it was no longer raining. It was windy and freezing cold. While entering Arizona, we saw some tumbleweeds, which was another thing we had never seen before, and we decided to get out and stretch our legs here at this Navajo shop, which I picked up a couple things like a beaded ring, a sand art picture, as well as a scorpion encapsulated keychain. Directly after seeing these pine trees covered in snow, we ended up in the middle of the cactus forest, which was so beautiful and something else that we had never seen before. Driving into LA was probably the most action-packed of our entire trip. The first thing we saw when we got there was a car chase that was being followed by several police officers as well as a helicopter. After that, there was a car crash directly beside us, which we just barely avoided. And after driving around for hours in the middle of the night trying to find parking, we finally found a hotel. We were then headed to pick up our delivery for our job, and we saw a multiple car race that included a motorcycle. The traffic wasn't too bad with everything going on during COVID, but the parking was terrible. But luckily we were still able to make a few stops before we had to go. Our next stop was Los Angeles, where we booked a hotel called the Luxor, and this was probably the most fun we had on our entire trip. Arizona was probably the most beautiful place we drove through over the entire trip. Arizona was probably the most beautiful place we drove through over the entire trip. Even though we didn't directly go through the Grand Canyon, we went through Phoenix area and then northern Arizona on the way back. Besides this livestock in Texas, the only animals we ended up seeing on our trip was a sighting of an elk in Oklahoma, as well as a moose in Arizona, where the pine trees and the snow were. After the job was complete, we went to one of the last remaining Fazoli locations, which is a fast food drive-through sort of Italian restaurant that I highly recommend. But at least we knew we were getting close to home. But at least we knew we were getting close to home.